This is Stephanie with Spinstress in the Making blog on Weebly, and I am working on the last block of the Sewcialites quilt along, and it's going to be the number 36 kindness block. And let me just tell you, I am super excited to reach the end of the Sewcialites quilt along. I mean, it's been fun, but I have so many other projects I need to work on that it's nice to finally be able to focus on those and maybe leave this world with no unfinished business and not get stuck here for all eternity. So we are going to be working on the 9-inch block for this one. And for your background fabric, you're going to need 4 2 by 6.5 inch rectangles. You're also going to need 4 2 by 3.5 inch rectangles and 10 2-inch squares. And then for your print fabric, you're going to need all the squares in the world. They're going to be 2 inches, and you're going to need a total of 18 of them. And for pretty much 16 of those squares, I have drawn a line on the back because we're going to be sewing directly on that line to help create half triangle squares from those eventually. But without further ado, let's start off with our center piece of our block, which means you're going to take 2 of your 2-inch squares. Actually, not the ones that you drew on because that would be stupid. And do take the ones that you did not draw on because you don't want to have to redraw lines again. And put those in the middle like this. If I can get the fabric. So what we're going to do here is you're going to have them set up like a checkerboard. You're going to sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I would press towards your darker fabric, whatever that is for you, if it's your background or your print fabric. Press it towards your darker fabric, and then sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance down the middle right here, making sure that this seam right here is nice and snug, not smug, snug. So I will come back to you once I've done that, and then we will work on getting some of these flying geese created to help make the star center of this block. Alright, so I have the very center of our block complete, and now what we are going to do is we are going to take our lovely 3.5 inch pieces of our background fabric here. These are your rectangles, the 2 by 3.5s, and then you're going to be attaching 2 of your 2-inch squares onto each of these pieces. So I'll line these up. Make sure your good sides are facing together on these. And you're going to take, of course, the blocks that have that line on it because you're going to be sewing directly on that line. And you're going to place it all the way nice and even in this corner over here with the line going in towards that center of your rectangle for all of your blocks. So we're going to take 4 of those, sew directly on the line, cut with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then press in towards your center background piece. And then once we have done that, then you come back, place your other block with the point facing in again towards the center of your block, put it over here, sew directly on that line across for all 4 of these pieces, and then cut this piece off with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Iron this down, and you will have 4 flying geese that we will then attach to a couple of our white background blocks that will help create the star further. But first I'm going to create these flying geese, and then we will lay out the block, and you'll see the order in which I will sew that center star piece together. So I'll come back to you when I've done that. Okay, so I have created my 4 flying geese, and now what we can do is start creating that center star. So as you can see, I cut off the extra fabric and pressed out towards my print fabric on my flying geese. And now what we can do is take the center block we've created, and you want the points of your flying geese right here, the one that creates that arrow, you want it to be pointing in towards that center block on all sides, like this. And as you can see, it's starting to create a star. And then you're going to take 4 of your background 2-inch squares and put them in the corners like this. So what I'm going to do is sew this together, this strip together, and then these strips together. And once those are created, then I will be sewing all three together to get the nice star centerpiece of this block. I have sewn my three strips together. I have pressed out towards my corner blocks and then pressed in towards my center block for this middle strip, and then pressing out towards my corner blocks for this last strip. So we're going to fold these down, sandwich those seams nice together, and so with a 1/4 inch seam allowance here, press open, and then take this one, fold it up. So with a 1/4 inch seam allowance down here, making sure your points are nice and meeting right there, and then press out, and then you will have the centerpiece finished for this block. All right, so our center star is sewn together, and now we can move on to our next pieces, which are going to be our 6.5 by 2 inch background fabric pieces. Make sure you lay them out nice and flat with the good sides facing you. And then we're going to be taking more of our 2 inch print blocks and putting them in the corners of these pieces. So we have a line drawn on these, and you're going to be putting them facing in towards that center like this. So you're going to sew from this edge to this edge. Make sure they're all lined up like that on this corner. And then you're going to do the opposite on the other corner, where you're going to make sure that your line again is going facing the opposite way in towards the center of your rectangle. Put it and line it up against that edge. And then you're going to be sewing directly on the line for all these pieces. Then you're going to trim off your edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then you're going to press out towards your triangular piece, or whatever works best for you. So I'm going to sew all these pieces on, trim off my extra pieces, and then iron them out, and then we will continue on with the rest of our block. Sorry, didn't even know that was not focused, but that is what you're going to be sewing. So sewing on the line here, and then trimming here and here, pressing out, and doing that for all 4 of those rectangle pieces with your print squares. I have finished sewing those 4 pieces together and pressed out towards my print triangle, and I have all the skinnier background pieces in towards my center star block, so that way you get that extra little point coming out from those stars. And then the last 4 pieces of your background fabric are going to go in the corner. So as you can see, this went here, here, and here. So what we're going to do first is sew across here to make those lines, sew these 3 pieces together, and then sew this piece together. And I'm going to press outwards on my bottom pieces, just because it's going to be easier instead of pressing in towards my triangles. And then in the center piece, I'm going to press in this way, just so I get nice creases here and here when I sandwich them together, and hopefully get good points on those blocks. So I'm going to sew those 3 pieces together, and then sew on this line with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew here with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and that will finish our whole entire kindness block. Alright, so here is the finished block for the number 36 Kindness Sewcialites quilt along. So now that we have finished our blocks, now we have the ability to take the last remainder of our 10-inch blocks of assorted colors, or of one solid color, make half triangle squares to make those points, and then lay out our blocks, fill it in with our background fabric, and sew the whole entire top together. So I will eventually be maybe filming a few videos where I kind of walk through that process, because honestly I may not have looked hard enough, but I didn't really see the finishing instructions for the quilt. So I'm just going to walk it through myself and maybe lay it out just in case there isn't anything, and it might help other people's out to finish this quilt. And as always, happy quilting. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe to my channel so I can bring you more content. It could be quilting, spinning, cooking, but mostly fiber arts, I would say. And I will see you guys later. I hope you guys had a really fun time doing this quilt along. I know I'm happy that I was able to complete it, and I'll have a finished top in no time soon. Bye.